It's funny how betrayal smells like cinnamon and fir needles. I used to think Christmas was sacred. The family photos, the fireplace, the ritual of untangling 20-year-old lights she refused to replace. Now I see it for what it was, a stage set, and I was the prop. The laugh came when I opened her coat closet looking for my scarf and found 2 Christmas cards tucked neatly under a stack of old Real Simple magazines. One addressed to her parents, normal. The other? No envelope. Just loose. Just sitting there like it belonged nowhere. Like it wanted to be found. That's what struck me. Not the contents at first. Not the childish handwriting she used. Not even the words, which dripped with forced intimacy. I wish I could kiss you under the real tree this time, but the nakedness of it. Like it had shed its shell in our house, in my house, and decided to lie there quietly. Like a snake's skin. I remember laughing. Just once, short and sharp, because of course she wouldn't even seal it. And that laugh felt dangerous. The kind that sticks in your throat after. I didn't say anything. That was the key. If you want real power, don't explode. Let silence grow fangs. I read the card a second time later that night, when she was asleep next to me, drooling slightly the way she always did after wine. Love forever, your real home. Real home. I sat there in the dark and looked around our bedroom, at the antique dresser I sanded by hand, the curtains I never liked but hung because she said they softened the morning glare. And I felt the walls breathe. Not closing and breathing. Like they were waking up with me. That phrase, real home, echoed for days. Weeks. I started noticing her habits again, not the innocent ones. The small betrayals. She started locking her phone. She started getting overly helpful with my calendar, suggesting I book golf days with my old college friends. You need to get out more, she said one morning, smiling with toast crumbs on her lip. I said, good idea. Then I cleared the entire week to watch. And what I saw, or rather what I didn't see, confirmed it. She wasn't meeting him in obvious places. But she'd started dressing too carefully just to run errands. The same black scarf she only used when she wanted to feel sexy. She'd come back flustered, glowing like she'd been complimented. That's the detail that stuck. She always made sure her lipstick was fully gone when she returned, but her perfume was fresh, reapplied. Like she wanted him to remember her scent, but not the kiss. I don't believe in confrontation. That's for people who need clarity. I already had mine. So I did the logical thing. I faked the thaw. Let's write Christmas cards together this year, I suggested one evening. She was cutting vegetables, thin little slices like she always did when she wanted to feel in control. I love that, she said, and her voice caught, just a fraction. Like maybe she thought she was being forgiven. That maybe I suspected, but still chose her. That was my first real victory. We sat down with our address book, wine, and a fire crackling. She drafted the message. This year taught us the value of love, of choosing each other again. I said it was perfect. I told her how proud I was of us. That night, we made love. She wept after, thanking me. I held her and planned the rest. Because if there's anything worse than being betrayed, it's letting the betrayer believe they got away with it. I made 42 copies of her message. Sent them to every person who ever knew us as a couple, including a few she probably didn't think I remembered. Including, of course, her coworker's wife. How? Easy. The return address on his card was right there. I added him to our list, just another holiday cheer recipient. Then I slipped an extra invitation inside. For our New Year's party. I even added a handwritten line, bring your lovely wife. We'd love to finally meet her. It was my signature that sold it. She knew it well. When he walked into our home on December 31st, holding his wife's hand, my wife's face did something strange. It didn't just freeze, it rearranged. Like her entire facial system had to shut down and reboot. She said nothing, just stared. And he, poor idiot, clearly hadn't told his wife a thing. They mingled awkwardly. I made polite jokes, served everyone mulled wine, and waited. The party climaxed at midnight. I gave a toast, told everyone how grateful I was for love and growth, and how sometimes the bravest thing two people can do is admit it's over. The silence was exquisite. I handed her an envelope, told her not to open it till morning. Then I smiled and kissed her cheek in front of everyone. A few gasped. Most clapped. She tried to smile. Tried. The next day, she found legal notices, proof of asset transfers, and confirmation that I'd sold the house under her nose. She always claimed we were equals. Turns out she was just a tenant with benefits. Now she's neither. It was a Tuesday when the dread started to take shape, not like a punch, more like a pulse. Something small and quiet that grew each time I chose not to ignore it. She'd left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. Nothing new there, except this time, it buzzed. Not rang. Buzzed once, then again exactly 30 seconds later. I glanced at the screen. Just a notification bubble, one new photo received, from a number not saved in her contacts. Then another. You're gonna love this angle. That's all. My mouth went dry, and not because I thought she was cheating yet. No, what twisted the knife wasn't the message itself, but how it disappeared. Vanished. Auto-deleted before I could touch it. I didn't even know phones could do that. She came downstairs 15 minutes later in one of those robes she only wore when she wanted something smooth gray, cinched at the waist, no makeup but just the right amount of gloss. She kissed my cheek and asked if I'd remembered to pick up her almond milk. I hadn't, but I told her I had. Just to watch her lie when she said, "Perfect, thank you." Her voice was higher. That was the first real confirmation. You live with someone for over 20 years and you know when they're off. Her voice, normally level and calm, like she'd rehearsed every sentence, now had this lift, this floatiness, that I'd only ever heard when she'd called her boss to fake sick. I remember once, years ago, she'd said, "My voice is my poker tell." She'd been proud of it. Back then, I thought it was charming. Now it felt like a neon sign over her forehead flashing, liar. That week, I noticed her scent had changed. Not just the perfume, but the actual chemical undertone. She'd always worn something floral and warm, jasmine, sandalwood. Now it was something sharper, more citrus. She claimed she'd switched because the old one gave her migraines. But that scent, whatever it was, smelled familiar. Too familiar. Like someone else's. And then there was the new phone alarm. Set for 4:40 a.m. Not 4:30. Not 5. That odd little slice of time. It would go off every morning, and she'd shut it off in less than a second. No snooze. No movement. Just a quick tap in the dark and silence again. I asked once, casually, half asleep, what it was for. "Oh," she said, "just a reminder to start fasting early." It was so specific. And so wrong. She wasn't on a diet. She wasn't tracking anything. But she smiled after saying it, so sure I'd believe it. And I did, at least out loud. By the end of December, she started volunteering to drive the trash out to the curb, which was odd enough. She used to hate the cold. Claimed her joints ached. But now she'd do it cheerfully, scarf on, gloves neat, boots zipped. Always on Monday night. Always exactly at 8:10 p.m. That specificity again. I tested it. "I'll take the bins out tonight," I said one week. She hesitated. Just a flicker. Then smiled too quickly. "No, I've got it. You always do so much. Let me." That night, I followed her. Quiet. I took the side door. She was out there longer than it takes to drop 2 bins. Just standing near the edge of the driveway, looking down the road. Waiting. Then she pulled out her phone, typed something fast, and looked toward the end of the cul-de-sac. No one came. But she waited. And when she walked back in, she didn't see me behind the garage. Her walk was slower. Not disappointed, controlled. Like she didn't want to look like she was hoping for something that never showed. What really opened the hole in my chest was the cologne. Mine. I've worn the same one for a decade. Woodsy, classic, not too strong. She always said it reminded her of when we first met. But a few weeks ago, she came into the bathroom while I was getting ready and wrinkled her nose. "That scent's a little much lately," she said. "Have you ever thought of switching it up?" Then she handed me a bottle she'd bought. "Try this one," she said. "It's cleaner." I opened it. Sprayed once. My skin crawled. It was the exact scent she claimed she hated in our first year together. Said it reminded her of some high school boyfriend. I knew she hadn't bought it for me. I knew, deep in the marrow, that this wasn't her suggestion. It was a replacement. Someone else wore it. Someone she wanted me to smell like. I smiled. Said I'd give it a shot. Sprayed it once more the next morning, just before kissing her neck. She shivered. Not in pleasure and panic. A short, involuntary shiver that spoke louder than a scream. That was when I knew she was not only cheating. She was trying to mold me into him. Replace me with him. And if that was her plan, then mine would be far more precise. Because now I had what I needed, not just a motive, but a blueprint. Her habits. Her tells. Her sacred rituals. I didn't just suspect anymore. I knew. And I knew exactly where to start unraveling her life, thread by thread, until she was left standing in the ruins of her own lies. It started with the cards. Not the one I found, ours. The ones we were writing together, the holiday lies we were stringing into cheerful envelopes. She was curled up on the couch with a glass of red, legs tucked beneath her like a teenager, asking if I thought we should sign off with all our love or warmest wishes. That's when it cracked. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the entire performance, the faintly curled hair, the cardigan she only wore when trying to seem softer, more domestic, the pin held in just the right way to look candid for the photos she would probably take later. And something inside me gave. Snapped. Not like a branch. Like a dam. I stood up, walked into the hall closet, and pulled out the box of old cards we'd saved over the years. Our wedding thank yous, our son's birth announcements, anniversary notes, even one she'd given me after I lost my father. "You are my mountain," it read. I didn't say a word. I brought the whole box into the living room and dumped it onto the fireplace grate. She looked up, confused at first, blinking like she couldn't quite process it. I struck a match and held it to the bottom of our 5th anniversary card, the one where we promised to grow old together under the same stars. It curled like dry leaves, the ink blistering in seconds. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice already climbing. "Cleaning house," I said, and dropped the match into the pile. It caught fast. Flames licked up the edges of birthdays and apologies and promises she never meant. The scent of scorched paper filled the room. She jumped up and reached toward it. I blocked her. "Don't pretend you care," I said. "You don't mourn things you never believed in." She froze. Her mouth opened, then shut. Then she did what all liars do when cornered. She played dumb. "What is this about?" she asked, soft, rehearsed. I laughed. Actually laughed. "It's about your real home," I said. "You know, the one you write about in secret cards. The one you send to people you don't save in your contacts. The one with a different cologne and a 4:40 a.m. alarm." Her face cracked. Not shattered. Cracked, like paint over rotting wood. She whispered my name like it was a spell meant to stop time. I didn't let her finish. I walked over to her perfume stand, lifted the one she wore the night we first slept together, the one she wore to my mother's funeral, the one she said made her feel invincible. I unscrewed the lid and poured it slowly into the fire. The scent hissed and flared. "There," I said. "That's the smell of lies burning." She moved to stop me. I stepped back. "One more step," I said, "and I swear I'll make you watch me smash every picture of us with a hammer." Her eyes filled, but she didn't move. "You don't get to cry," I told her. "You use those tears up on someone else's couch." Then I pulled out the invitation list, the one she'd been compiling for our New Year's party. I held it up and read the names aloud. Friends, coworkers, people we hadn't seen in years. Then I held up the last name, the one she hadn't seen me at. "Greg and Lisa Miller," I said. Her eyes darted. "You invited them," she said too quickly. I nodded. "Well, Greg got a card. The one you meant for him. And Lisa? She'll be at our house at midnight, holding his hand." Her mouth dropped open. I stepped closer. "You thought I'd never know. You thought you were clever. You thought I was asleep, didn't you?" I pointed toward the couch, the rug, the hearth. "Every inch of this house has seen me build it, love it, defend it. You walked through it like it was yours to remake in someone else's image." She tried again. "It was a mistake," she whispered. I shook my head. "No. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is locking your keys in the car. You don't accidentally send love letters. You don't slip and fall into someone else's bed before dawn." She reached for me then, not to hold me, but to stop the unraveling. I stepped back again. "No more pretending," I said. "You had your act. You played the victim. You cried and kissed and cooked like everything was fine. Now it's my turn to act." I turned off the Christmas music we'd been playing. The silence hit like a slap. "You wanted peace," I said. "You'll get it. After everyone knows who you really are. After your little fantasy world collapses in on itself. After he walks through that door with his wife on his arm and sees you in your Sunday dress, standing in the ruins of your performance." She sank into the couch like a marionette with cut strings. I walked upstairs, slowly, methodically. I opened our closet and began packing a bag. Not mine, hers. The dress she wore the night we renewed our vows? I left it. The necklace I gave her on our 10th? Took it back. Everything else? I crammed it into a suitcase, wheeled it downstairs, and left it by the door. "You might need this," I said, "for wherever your real home is." And then I sat on the porch and waited for the wind to rise. It's strange how clarity doesn't arrive with a bang. It creeps in like frost. Quiet, creeping, unstoppable. The morning after I burned the box of memories, after she sat in the living room pretending she still belonged to this house, I made coffee the way I always did, black, French press, 2 minutes longer than the instructions said because she liked it stronger. I brought it to her without a word and watched her flinch as she took it. Not out of fear, but because she didn't know how to receive a gesture without controlling it. That's when it started. The shift. The detachment. I looked at her sitting there, wrapped in the throw blanket we picked out together in 2014, the one she said made the room feel like us, and realized she hadn't meant it then either. Nothing was us. It was always performance. Always presentation. I saw it all with new eyes, the way her voice never dipped below a certain octave when speaking to me, but dropped into something huskier when she talked to anyone else. How she always used the same 3 phrases when she apologized. I didn't mean to. You're overreacting. Let's not ruin this. Word for word, like a speech memorized in case of emergency. I remembered an old voicemail I kept from her, saved out of sentimentality, something about how lucky she felt to wake up next to me. I played it again that night, alone, lights off. And I realized she'd said the same thing to me just 3 weeks ago. Same tone, same inflection, like she was reading from a script. It wasn't emotion. It was programming. That's when I knew I wasn't grieving a relationship. I was grieving a mirage. I'd spent years thinking I was building something permanent, something rooted. She'd been decorating a stage set. Her love wasn't absent, it was duplicated. Pasted across text threads and pillow talks and hotel sheets. I'd seen the pattern now. Her I love yous were identical, her affections mechanically replicated. There was no intimacy, only efficiency. She said, "Good morning, Red Heart," to me every day without fail, always at 7:12 a.m. Out of curiosity, I got access to her backup email, where her app receipts and notification digest piled up. That's when I saw it. She sent that same exact message to 3 people. Me, Greg, and someone labeled N. Everyone, 7:12 a.m. She wasn't being thoughtful, she was scheduling reminders. The thought didn't break me. It settled me. Because now I wasn't fighting for something real, I was dismantling something artificial. That's where the logic came in. Real revenge isn't about anger. It's not about screams or slaps or storming out. It's about precision. It's about timing. And more than anything, it's about silence. I realized the most powerful thing I could do wasn't to expose her to everyone. It was to let her expose herself. Let her bask in the warmth of my apparent forgiveness. Let her think I was healing, believing again, reinvesting. Let her walk around this house thinking she still ran it. Let her imagine the party would be a celebration of reconciliation. She had no idea I'd already started moving money months ago. No idea the bank accounts were decoupled. No idea the cabin in Tennessee, her favorite place, was no longer in our name. I'd sold it to someone she hated. To Greg's ex-wife. Poetic, right? She always called that cabin the only place she felt pure. Now it's in the hands of the woman whose life she helped wreck. She'd never step foot in it again. Every night after that shift, I'd sit beside her on the couch and analyze her as if she were a character in a failed script. She'd touch my arm in the exact same way every time. She'd apologize for nothing, just to assert softness. She started saying things like, "I'm so glad we're getting through this," as if the wound was mutual. She used the word, "we," like a weapon. That's when I remembered something her sister once said, years ago. After too much wine at a wedding, Jenna knows how to fake closeness better than anyone I've ever met. At the time I laughed. Now I realized her sister wasn't joking. She was warning me. I saw Jenna differently now. Not as a betrayer, but as a habitual improviser. She rehearsed feelings. Practiced her crying. I caught her once in the mirror, just days ago, rehearsing a worried face. Touching her cheek, blinking twice, then frowning faintly. I didn't ask what she was doing. I simply watched. Logged it. Everything became data. Evidence. Her entire presence in this house became inventory to me. What would stay? What would be erased? What would be used as leverage? By the end of that week, I knew my final move wasn't just revenge, it was redesign. She tried to rewrite our past. I would rewrite her future. Without her knowing it, she was walking into a carefully constructed narrative, one where she would believe I had chosen to heal with her, just long enough for her to trust it. The party would be the altar. The reveal? The exorcism. And I wouldn't raise my voice once. Because the silence of a man who has nothing left to lose, and everything planned, is louder than any accusation. She took my trust and turned it into her stage. I would take her script and turn it into a trap. She came down the stairs in that ivory sweater I bought her for our last anniversary, holding 2 mugs of cocoa like this was still a home, like we were still some Hallmark couple fumbling our way back to love. I let her hand me the mug, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "You've been screwing a ghost, Jenna. I know more about him than you do." She froze, didn't blink. Just stood there as the heat rose from her mug like smoke from a funeral pyre. I took a sip. You met him at that foundation gala in August. You wore the green dress with the low back. He told you he liked the scent of citrus. You told him you hated your husband's cologne. He laughed. You texted him that night while I was snoring next to you, didn't you? Her lips parted, but no sound came. It's okay, I continued. I've got the deleted logs. You labeled him Mason in the calendar, like you thought you were clever. You logged your gym visits, your meetings, your lunch breaks. But he was always there, just beneath the entries. Every Wednesday you got your vitamin drip at 1 p.m.? That was him, wasn't it? She started to speak, but I held up my hand. No, you don't get to talk yet. You had months. I stood and circled the island slowly, savoring the tremble in her hand. You know what tipped me off, Jenna? You stopped being creative with your lies. You recycled your excuses like they were printouts. I'm overwhelmed. I just need space. You're not the man you used to be. Funny, because I still am. I still fix this house when it breaks. I still remember the codes to the bank accounts. I still cook dinner when you forget to eat. You didn't want someone new. You wanted someone easy. I set the mug down with precision, not force. Tell me, when you whispered, I love you, last week, was that meant for me, or did you just forget which name was on the bed? Her mouth opened again, instinct, muscle memory. She was reaching for the old playbook, the one with tears on page 1 and gaslight on page 2. I didn't let her get there. You rehearsed this, didn't you? I said. I watched you in the mirror, practicing sadness like it was a monologue. And you're good, Jenna, I'll give you that. But not good enough to fool someone who stopped giving you the benefit of the doubt. She finally found her voice shaky, too soft. I was confused, she said, and I laughed. Loud, sharp, mocking. Confused? You planned entire days around your affair. You coordinated alibis, changed scents, scheduled alarms. That's not confusion. That's architecture. That's design. I took a step closer. You said we were healing. You laid your head on my chest and told me you felt safe again. But you weren't rebuilding. You were camouflaging. You used my loyalty like a rug to hide your footprints. Her face twisted, not in guilt, but in fear. Real fear. The first honest emotion I'd seen from her in months. What are you going to do? She asked. I smiled. Already done. I walked to the drawer, pulled out the envelope I'd prepared, and dropped it on the counter. This is a receipt, I said. For every lie you've fed me. I've transferred the joint savings to my private account. I've frozen the credit lines. The house? Technically, it's mine. Remember that paperwork you signed back in March? Yeah, you were too distracted to notice the clause reversal. My lawyer was thorough. She looked down at the envelope like it was a grenade. I wasn't done. And Greg, he's coming to the party. With Lisa. I invited them personally. He doesn't know you're going to be there. Lisa doesn't know you're her husband's other woman. But they will. At midnight. Her breath hitched. I saw her lips start to tremble. Please, she whispered. You don't have to. I don't have to? I barked. I get to. You had your freedom. You chose deception. You stood in our bedroom smelling like him, touching me like I was a formality. And now you think I owe you mercy? I stepped back, let the silence crush her. Then, lower, colder. I'm not angry you cheated, Jenna. I'm angry I wasted my loyalty. I gave you the best of me while you rationed out scraps. You built a second life in the shadows and expected me to be the dimwit lighting candles for it. She slumped into the chair, holding her stomach like the truth had struck her physically. Maybe it had. I leaned down, voice flat. I hope he's worth what you just lost. Because after this, there's no more pretending. No more forgiveness. No more playing house. You'll get to see who you really are, through the eyes of everyone you lied to. I turned to leave the room, then paused at the door. Oh, and wear something nice for the party. It's going to be the last time you walk into a room thinking you still belong there. She broke faster than I expected. As soon as I turned from the counter and started walking away, the tears began, not the quiet ones, the kind she used to manipulate tension into tenderness, but loud, heaving sobs like a child denied dessert. She dropped to her knees right there on the tile, cocoa spilled across the rug, mug broken at her feet. Please, she gasped, as if the air itself were rejecting her. You can't do this, not after everything we've built. I stopped, looked back. You didn't build, I said. You borrowed. And then you burned it. She crawled forward a step, hands outstretched, fingers trembling like they could still charm their way back into ownership of my mercy. I made a mistake, she whimpered. I was lost. Save it. I cut in. You weren't lost. You were busy. Coordinating schedules, sending love notes, setting alarms for early morning affairs. That's not confusion. That's choreography. She shook her head so hard I thought she'd snap her own neck. It didn't mean anything. He doesn't mean anything. You're the one I love. That line. The fallback. The emergency lever she pulled when everything else failed. I almost laughed. She tried to stand then, legs unsteady, eyes searching for softness in me, some crack she could worm her way back through. I'll do anything, she said. We can go to therapy. I'll confess to your family. I'll make it right. Just tell me what to do. I walked back toward her, slowly, deliberately, then crouched just enough to meet her eye. You want to confess to my family? I asked, voice calm. You're too late. They already know. I sent the Christmas card. Her face twitched, something between rage and humiliation. No, she whispered. You didn't. I nodded. To everyone, including Greg's wife. She replied with a thank you, by the way. Jenna backed up like I'd struck her. You're a monster, she hissed, and that's when I smiled. No, I said. I'm a reflection. You made me this way. She tried anger then. It was her last tool. You think this makes you strong? Ruining us in front of everyone? What does that even prove? I stood fully and looked down at her like the crumbled statue she'd become. It proves that I'm done pretending you were ever something sacred. You were a distraction with lipstick. She threw herself at me then, not violently, desperately. Arms around my waist, head buried in my stomach, sobbing nonsense. Please, Tom. Please, please, I can change. I'll erase him. Block him. I'll prove it. You don't have to end this. We were good. We were solid. I peeled her off me like a wet towel. We were convenient, I said. Until I started expecting integrity. She lunged again, this time trying seduction. She tugged the sweater off one shoulder, brushed her fingertips across my hand. You still want me, she breathed. You always will. No one knows you like I do. I stepped back, wiped her touch from my skin. You're right, I said. No one knows me like you do. And that's exactly why I'll never trust you again. You knew everything and still chose someone else's mouth. She crumbled again, legs folding under her. I watched her from above, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to keep her lies warm. Then came the letter. Handwritten. Slid under my study door while I was reviewing the transfer confirmations. 8 pages of flowery guilt, blame twisted into apology, memories contorted into justifications. You were cold. I was lonely. He made me feel seen. I read it aloud in the living room while she sat curled on the couch, eyes swollen, lips shaking. I mocked every sentence. You said, I never stopped loving you. Funny. You sent him a card that said, forever. She looked away. I kept reading. You were always busy. Right. I was fixing our life while you were breaking into someone else's. The last line said, I'll never forgive myself. I looked at her and said, neither will I. But the difference is, I won't pretend to. Then I tore the letter in half, slowly, and dropped the pieces into the fireplace. She jumped at the sound of each crackle. She tried one more time, clung to my leg like a child, sobbing, shaking, pressing her face against me like that would erase everything. Please, Tom, don't leave me in this. I don't know who I am without you. I looked down and said, that's the only honest thing you've said in months. Then I shook her off, calmly, firmly, and walked to the door. You'll figure it out, I said. But not here. And not with my help. She screamed as I walked out. Not a name, not a word, just a sound. A raw, animal sound. And it was the first time I truly believed she understood what she'd lost. Not just the house, or the money, or the appearance. But me. The man who would have walked through hell for her. Who now wouldn't cross the street. The silence after her breakdown was delicious. Not peaceful, clinical. She moved around the house like a sleepwalker, eyes puffy, mouth half open like she was always on the verge of saying something, but never sure if it would help or make things worse. She cooked breakfast the next morning. Eggs. Toast. My favorite coffee. I didn't touch any of it. I sat at the dining table with my laptop, finalizing the last threads of a trap she walked into months ago and still hadn't noticed. The irony is she helped build the gallows. That little vacation folder on our shared drive, the one she used to store Airbnb ideas and dream retreats. She thought I was adding potential getaways. In reality, I was uploading legal files, copies of the property transfer she signed in March, thinking it was to refinance for investment flexibility. No, it was me moving sole ownership of the house to my name, using a trust that lists her as a resident, not an owner. She clicked and signed it on the patio while sipping Chardonnay, too busy rehearsing her next lie to read the fine print. I remember her smiling at me afterward, saying, "This is good for us." It was. Then there was the cabin in Tennessee. Her sanctuary. The place she called the reset button. I'd already sold it 3 weeks ago, just before the second honeymoon plan I'd floated to rebuild trust. What she didn't know is that the buyer was Greg's ex-wife. When Jenna finds out who owns it now, it'll land like a slap made of stone. I coordinated the sale quietly, through a title company she's never heard of, then transferred the proceeds into a locked account that doesn't carry my name, just a string of letters, our old dog's name, followed by the anniversary date she forgot last year. It's all there. I even made her sign off on the release paperwork by stapling it to some insurance renewal documents. She was in a rush to get to her Pilates class that day. Didn't ask a single question. Her phone? I cloned it. Used a forensic toolkit I borrowed from a former client in cybersecurity. Took 10 minutes to mirror the entire contents. Texts, images, voicemails, even the little deleted voice memos she thought were private journals. One, dated October 4th, was just her whispering. "I'm scared he'll find out. I don't want to lose the money. I just need more time." I saved it, labeled it devotion.mp3, and synced it to her work email as a draft. Time to auto-send during her staff's Monday Zoom meeting next week. The irony will be sublime. Her co-workers already resent her. This will be the match on gasoline. Her reputation in that office will implode before noon. The party planning? That was her masterpiece of delusion. She thought it meant hope, redemption. I encouraged it, poured her wine, gave her playlist suggestions, told her the guest list looked perfect. Every time she smiled, thinking we were healing, I added another nail to the coffin. I confirmed Greg and Lisa's RSVP myself. Sent Lisa a message through a mutual friend with just enough breadcrumbs to spark curiosity. "Looking forward to seeing you at the party. I've heard Greg's been very generous with his affection this year." No reply, but I know she read it. She'll come. And when she sees Jenna standing in the living room with a speech in her hand and a glass of champagne, it will detonate every thread of the double life they both thought was invisible. I had one last thing to secure, the deed update Jenna never bothered to check. She assumed, because we'd discussed it years ago, that her name was still on our primary home. It wasn't. I'd used a silent trust strategy, moved it into my personal holding, and had the title transferred through a blind LLC. Legal, quiet, irrevocable. She was technically a guest in her own living room, baking cookies in a house she no longer owned. To seal it, I had her sign the last waiver for a refinance rate lock 2 nights ago while she was half drunk, watching an old rom-com she always played when she wanted to feel safe. She didn't even ask what it was. Everything's ready. The party is the final movement. The curtain call. She'll walk into a perfectly staged arena. Guests, candles, music, speeches, and right before midnight, just after the toast she's planned about renewal and growth, I'll hand her the envelope. Inside, she'll find the trust termination notice, the property reassignment, and a printout of her own voice memo, transcribed in perfect punctuation. And behind her, she'll hear Lisa ask Greg, "Is this the woman?" And he'll say nothing. That silence will be confirmation. Jenna will turn pale. She'll look at me. I'll be smiling, champagne in hand, like the proud host of a finale no one realized was scripted months in advance. And then I'll walk out. Just like that. No raised voice. No final word. Because by that point, everything that needed to be said would already be written into the walls she used to think belonged to her. She didn't even make it to midnight. The collapse started with Lisa. 10 minutes before the toast, before Jenna could float into her final illusion of control, Lisa stepped through the door, eyes hard, mouth set in a way that told everyone something was coming. Greg trailed behind her like a dog who knew the leash was about to snap. Jenna didn't recognize Lisa at first. She hadn't stalked that part of his life, hadn't cared. But when Lisa walked right up to her and said, "You're the reason my marriage is a headline in hell," the room split. You could hear the champagne fizz hiss between gulps. Jenna stammered, looked at me. I smiled, nodded, raised my glass. That's when Greg spoke for the first time. "She said it was over with him," he mumbled, to no one. "Guess not." And then Lisa turned to him, slapped him hard enough to knock his glass from his hand, and walked out. Everyone froze. Jenna looked around, grasping for some thread to pull, some witness to contradict what had just cracked open. But there were none. Because I made sure all the guests were people who already suspected. People I primed. Old friends. Quiet observers. Her coworker, the one she used to call beneath her, was filming on his phone. Not maliciously, just instinctively. Like even he could feel the tremor that was coming. Jenna turned to me, wild-eyed, cheeks flushed with panic. "You set this up," she hissed. I said nothing. Just handed her the envelope I'd been holding like a prize. She opened it and saw her name scratched out of our house deed. The trust termination. The voice memo transcript. She didn't finish reading. She ran. The next morning, her bank card declined at the coffee shop she used to frequent. She messaged me. "Card's not working?" A question, not a plea. I ignored it. She tried again. "Did you shut me out of our accounts?" Not, "Why?" Just did. I replied 3 hours later with a screenshot of the clause she'd signed. Per agreement, access expired upon revocation. No emotion. She responded with nothing. That afternoon, her mother called my phone. She was in tears. "Tom, what happened?" I told her, clearly, quietly, what Jenna had done, what she'd hidden. I sent her screenshots. I sent her the card. Her mother, who once called me the only man good enough for Jenna, didn't reply for 2 days. Then I saw her name pop up in the blocked callers list on Jenna's phone. Her father? Unfriended her on Facebook. Her sister? Left a comment on one of Jenna's old Instagram posts. "You always were good at pretending." 2 days later, her office removed her name from the staff page. Quietly. Then, at 9 a.m. on Monday, devotion.mp3 hit every inbox in her department. No one replied. No one needed to. Her assistant sent her a text. "HR said don't come in today. They'll mail your things." She showed up anyway. They were already in a box on the curb. Someone took a photo of her picking it up, makeup smeared, lips cracked. That photo made it to a group chat I'd been anonymously added to by a mutual friend. Captioned, "Queen finally dethroned." She still had her phone then. Still thought maybe she could hold on to the scraps. Until she found her social accounts frozen. Not deleted. Just logged out. Passwords changed. Not by me. By the platform. Someone reported them for identity fraud. Enough people clicked report that the algorithm flagged it. She emailed support from her backup. No reply. I didn't need to lift a finger for that part. People destroy what they no longer fear. Greg? Ghosted her within 24 hours. Blocked her number. Left the office under stress leave. Never returned. Word was, his wife emptied their joint savings and changed the locks. Jenna sent him one last text. "You said we had something real." The read receipt popped up. Then nothing. Silence. She called twice. Voicemail. She showed up at his place. A new woman answered the door, his sister. Said Greg had moved to his parents in Michigan. Left no forwarding address. The next week, she tried to visit our cabin. The one she called her soul's recharge. Drove 4 hours to Tennessee with one suitcase and a playlist titled Healing. She got to the gate and saw the news sign. Private property, owned by Monroe family. Greg's ex-wife's maiden name. She texted me, "You sold it to her?" I replied with a link to the county's public title database. "You should have read the paperwork." She sent one more message. "You've destroyed my life." I waited a beat, then replied, "No, I just took my life back." She now lives in a furnished rental 2 blocks from the strip mall where she used to shop like royalty. She doesn't post anymore. Doesn't smile in photos. The friends she hosted book clubs with have gone quiet. She tried to organize a brunch 2 weeks later. Only one person responded. "Can't. Busy." That was the last message in the thread. Her group chats? Silent. Her inbox? Empty. Her past? Eroding under the weight of her own design. No slander. No revenge porn. Just truth. Planted, exposed, and left to rot in the open air. And she's still standing. Barely. But now, for the first time in her life, with no mirrors to pose in front of and no one left to clap. The final blow was never going to be loud. It was going to be surgical, intimate, precise, and so personal it could only come from someone who once loved her. I waited until the pieces had already fallen. Her job, her reputation, her social circle hollowed out like a rotted tree. I wanted her to feel the emptiness, to breathe in the space where her empire used to be. That's when I struck the match. She still had one thing left. One fragment of image that hadn't collapsed. Her volunteer work. The one arena where she still pretended to be noble, selfless, decent. She ran the local women's wellness retreat every spring, led a workshop on emotional transparency. She had a waiting list of women who thought she was an icon of balance. What they didn't know was that every Tuesday during her so-called planning meetings, she was sneaking off to meet Greg in a parking garage behind the yoga studio. I had the photos. I had the timestamps. I had the location data and the receipts, literally. He bought her flowers once. Cheap ones. She told him it was the sweetest thing anyone's done for me in years. I compiled it all into a dossier, timeline, quotes, screenshots of her deleted journal entries she thought were backed up in a locked folder. They weren't. I'd mirrored her cloud months ago. The folder was named Personal Truth. I sent that dossier, anonymously, to every board member of the nonprofit. I didn't include commentary, just evidence. Let the raw material speak. 2 days later, they issued a statement. In light of emerging personal misconduct compromising the integrity of our mission, Jenna Taylor has resigned from her role effective immediately. She found out on her morning walk. Her phone buzzed 5 times. She clicked. Read. Froze. Sat down on the curb. I know, because I watched from my car across the street. She didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later, when she realized they were severing ties publicly. No thank you. No soft PR spin. Just resigned due to misconduct. A kiss of death in her circle. She called me that night. First time in weeks. Straight to voicemail. Then she tried again. Then a text. Was this you? I replied 4 hours later. Does it matter? You wrote the material. She stopped texting after that. For 2 days. Then she showed up at the house. Not the rental. My house. Our old house. She stood outside in the rain, wearing that same green coat from our trip to Charleston, the one she insisted on keeping, even after I asked her to leave it behind. She knocked once, then again, then stayed silent. I watched her through the peephole as she slid to the ground, knees pulled to her chest, soaked through, clutching something in her hand. A letter, maybe. I didn't open the door. Not after 30 minutes. Not after 3 hours. She stayed until sunrise. I never moved. The next strike was poetic. She had one luxury car left, gifted by her father before he cut ties. I'd helped her register it back when we were married. The name on the title? Mine. Oversight. One she never noticed, never cared to correct. I filed for repossession. Sold it at auction. Took the check. Donated every dollar, in her name, to the women's shelter she once used for networking. I made sure the receipt was public. They posted a thank you on their Facebook page. Special thanks to Jenna Taylor for her generous donation. The comments lit up. People confused. Curious. One said, wasn't she just ousted for unethical behavior? Another, wow, she's trying to save face, huh? I watched her like the director of a tragedy where the actress finally realized the script was written by her victim. But it wasn't complete yet. Not until she faced the one person she feared most. Her niece, Claire. The only blood relative who still admired her. Claire, 22, idealistic, engaged, and completely devoted to her cool Aunt Jenna. I waited until Claire posted their annual selfie. Jenna with her arm around her, captioned, "She always reminds me how to stay strong." I replied, from an anonymous account. Simple. One link. No words. It led to a private gallery. Screenshots of Jenna's messages, her duplicate good morning texts, her voice memo labeled, "He doesn't know I'm still seeing Greg." A photo of her at the hotel, date stamped. Claire DM'd me. Is this real? I answered, would I send it to you if it wasn't? She went silent. Then, 2 hours later, unfollowed Jenna. Removed every photo. Changed her own bio to, "Blood doesn't excuse betrayal." Jenna texted me again. One sentence. "You've taken everything." I replied, "No, I gave it all back, to the people you stole it from." The final blow wasn't just the loss of her job, her friends, her money, or her image. It was that no one believed her anymore. Her truth was in ashes. Her mask melted. And she wasn't just alone. She was known. Known for what she truly was. I didn't scream. I didn't strike. I just pointed. And everyone else watched her burn. She's still out there somewhere, I'm sure. Waking up alone in that rental unit with water stains on the ceiling and a bed that creaks louder than her apologies ever did. Maybe she still checks her email hoping for a job offer, a message from someone who didn't get the memo, a friend who missed the fallout. Maybe she scrolls through old photos of us, hoping to feel something, anything, other than the cold recognition of what she used to be before the mask cracked. But she won't find it. Because the version of her that people once respected, admired, envied, that version doesn't exist anymore. It was built on a lie she told so often she thought it was memory. Now, what's left? A name burned into every whispered conversation, every blocked contact, every HR file marked ethics breach. She told me once, years ago, that she feared dying forgotten. She used to say, "If no one remembers you, were you ever really here?" Well, congratulations, Jenna. You won't be forgotten. But not for the reasons you hoped. I never yelled. I never laid a hand on her. I never touched her in vengeance. But I touched everything else, her career, her image, her money, her credibility. I took back every piece she siphoned off me while calling it partnership. Every sacrifice I made while she whispered secrets to another man. Every time I said, "I trust you," while she smiled and lied. I remember those smiles now. Mechanical. Mirrored. Designed to keep me from seeing behind the curtain. She used affection like a fishing lure, shiny, floating, poisoned. So I stopped biting. I waited. I studied. And when the time came, I didn't explode. I excised. Clean. Cold. Necessary. You want to know if it was worth it? Look at me. I sleep. I eat. I wake up and don't have to guess what's real. I don't carry the weight of silence. I don't flinch when the phone buzzes or wonder what she's deleting. I live in a house that echoes again, not with suspicion, but with space. With calm. I rebuilt my life from the studs up, and I did it with a scalpel, not a hammer. That's the part they don't tell you. Revenge isn't a fire. It's a surgery. You don't burn what betrayed you. You cut it out. Carefully. Precisely. Completely. And when you're done, you stitch the skin back and walk away without a scar you didn't earn. She wanted control. That was her addiction. So I took it from her in the one place she couldn't manipulate: truth. I let her talk. I let her perform. I let her play her role until the curtain dropped and she realized the only audience left was her own echo. Every lie she told became the nails in her narrative's coffin. All I did was hand out the programs and show people their seats. She collapsed on her own stage. You still think I went too far? You think this was cruel? Let me ask you something. How many chances does a person get to destroy someone before you're allowed to stop offering them the benefit of the doubt? How long would you wait? How many months would you pretend, knowing every "I love you" is a carbon copy from another life? I didn't win her back. I won myself. And in the end, that's all that mattered. I'm not here to be applauded. I'm not a hero. I'm not even a good man in the traditional sense. But I am free. And I got there not by forgiveness, not by therapy, not by spiritual enlightenment, but by facing the lie with open eyes and tearing out its root. Some people say revenge is for the weak. I say regret is for cowards. I gave her years of faith. She gave me performance. I gave her a future. She sold it for a few texts and a thrill in a borrowed hotel room. She taught me one final lesson. Liars make great fuel. So here I am, writing this for you. Not because I need closure, I've had it. Not because I want sympathy, I don't. I want you to see what it looks like when a man stops believing in redemption for the unrepentant. I want you to feel the stillness that comes after fire, the calm of a life no longer shared with someone who thought your loyalty was her insurance policy. What would you have done? Sit in silence? Build a new life while pretending the old one didn't rot from the inside out? Or would you have lit the match and let the structure fall, piece by calculated piece, until only the truth remained standing? Me? I chose truth. I chose finality. I chose peace through destruction.